Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day. As they say, hip hip hooray. Now, as of this recording, you probably know that the main talk of the town would be probably the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Edge of Eternities. And yes, we're going to have our top 10 list video out pretty soon. But we are actually first going to talk about one really important thing that's going to be happening before we go to our set of Magic in Space. We actually have to talk about one eensy-weensy, actually pretty significant thing, which is rotation. Now, for those who are new to Magic due to Final Fantasy or any other Universe Beyond sets, rotation occurs essentially now once every 3 years. There was a time where it was once 2 years, and then we also have that weird thing where technically Foundation's a 5-year rotation set. It's a little complicated. But essentially with rotation, what happens is a few of the sets will get rotated out of Standard just to help freshen up the format and also allow the new sets some time to breathe and actually just allow people to have fun in Standard with the cards and such. So, nevertheless, the sets that are going to be rotating out of Standard specifically is the following. It is going to be Dominaria United, The Brothers War, Phyrexia All-Be-One, March of the Machines, and March of the Machines Aftermath, which in that sense, that was just a little mini set that essentially was a test to see if you could make a small micro standard set that had more of narrative resonance, but well, that one did not do too well, which then led to the fact of Outlaws of Thunder Junction having to cancel their own mini set and then actually have to make it a bonus sheet. It's a little complicated, not really related. Still, nevertheless, we are actually going to talk about the cards that I am both excited that is going to leave Standard from these sets, but also that I'm also going to miss, because we all have our pet cards from sets and such, and I have some pretty good pet cards from the set. There's also some cards that I am going to be so grateful that I don't have to see again in Standard for quite a while. Well, unless if it ever gets a reprint, I guess. But before we get started, we're actually going to do a unique twist on the honorary mention here, and that is, well, as of the week of this recording this, they actually had a recent BNR announcement, aka as they call it, the early rotation, and actually banned some cards out to help freshen up the format that were being a little bit, dare we say, toxic to the format, for lack of a better word. So, I'm going to talk about the 5 cards that I am going to be grateful I don't have to play in Standard anymore, thanks to the BNR announcement, as well as the 2 that I'm going to miss, specifically. So, the 5 that I'm happy that got banned: Monstrous Rage, made blocking impossible, Pro Tour results. Corey Steelcutter, Pro Tour results. The Little Heartfire Hero. To put it in the most bluntest terms, it was one of the more annoying early game mouse that can allow doing a lot of damage enabling shenanigans, especially with fleeing shenanigans. I was a little bit surprised at first this got banned, but then I remembered it got nerfed in Alchemy a while back, so I should have probably saw the writing on the wall. Hopeless Nightmare. This one is pretty easy and simple and to the point. Having your stuff discarded once is a little annoying, but in the Pitsy decks, that card got constantly replaced and played over and over again, and making your whole hand discarded was a tad bit obnoxious. It was kind of miserable. So yeah, I'm not gonna miss Hopeless Nightmare. As well as I'm not gonna miss This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us. This one's pretty simple. It was just really annoying tempo bounce, and then there was that whole combo that it had with Storm Chase's talent, where people just repeated it and such, and then essentially used Storm Chase's activated ability to return This Town Ain't Big Enough, and well, the loop happened, and it was a very obnoxious loop to go through. I am grateful I don't have to see that loop again, if I'm being quite frankly blunt. But also, the cards that I'm actually going to miss. And honestly, I'm gonna miss this. I'm gonna miss, honestly, Up the Beanstalk. Yes, this was an absolutely busted card. There's a reason why it's banned in Modern. But it was probably one of the best mid-range card draw engines that we ever got, and it was fun to actually just brew around and solve the puzzle. Even though the puzzle was just essentially, oh hey, this was really good with the Overlords from Dominaria. Oh hey, this was really good with Domain. Oh hey, this actually made a limited removal spell that was mostly going to be a draft limited removal spell in Aphrodrift actually become one of the most popular cards from the Aphrodrift Pro Tour. Rides in, for the record, if people were curious. So, yeah. And of course, it was also kind of making the design process for Wizard of the Coast a little bit tricky of making future designs, so yeah, that had to go. I also am going to miss Abrail's Awakening. This one is pretty simple. I kind of like my reanimation spells, and I do feel like this card kind of died for the sins of Omniscience. To be fair, the Abrail's Awakening Omniscience combo was a ridiculously absurd best of one deck. You even saw one in best of three at the Pro Tour, so one of the things had to go. I'm still sad it was Abrail's Awakening, since I kind of was hoping to play with it in Edge of Eternities to return spaceships so that I can make the Space Ghost deck joke, essentially. I wonder if my followers actually know what Space Ghost is. Space Ghost! Anyway, nevertheless, those are the cards from the BNR that I'm sad to go, and some that I'm happy that are got banned. But now let's actually get to the actual rotation that's going to happen with Edge of Eternities, and talk about the cards that I will miss, and the ones that I will not miss one little bit. Well, in theory. We'll get to it in a minute. Anyway, nevertheless, let's get started. Shall we? Boop.
Number 10.
First off, our number 10 entry of the card that I am not going to miss that's going to rotate out, and people are probably going to be surprised that it's this high on the list, and that's going to be Shieldred the Apocalypse. I think for some people this is kind of a surprise, since a lot of people will probably think this was going to be higher on the list, but honestly, while Shieldred the Apocalypse was a ridiculously powerful card, don't get me wrong, it punished card draw, it was a good 4-5 stat, it pretty much made anytime we see a card that says deal 5 damage be like, oh, that can kill this Shieldred. It was very obnoxious. There was a period where pretty much any mid-range deck would play this card, and it got really obnoxious. It kind of died down in popularity for a minute, though, because due to the factor of the rise of aggro decks, due to the cards that were banned, as I mentioned before. See, there was a reason why I decided to make that honorary mention. But still, it kind of is getting its popularity again before rotation, and I will say, I am not going to miss this card. It punished card draw, it was a little bit obnoxious, not going to lie, but it also was not the worst card in the world. It was kind of like the Boogeyman for a bit, but then it just kind of was like, it's a card that pretty much, once people realize, oh, I need to put removal in my deck, the card was just kind of fine. But still, I am going to be happy that I do not have to deal with my card draw being punished, with the exception of that little free drop in Foundations. That's like the Phyrexian Altarist or some shtick like that. And there, you can show it here. Now, as for the card that's number 10 that I'm going to miss, ironically enough, it's Shieldred, but not Shieldred the Apocalypse, Shieldred from March of the Machines. This is just actually kind of like a really cool legendary design, just being a nice little tempo removal, essentially, to remove something is very nice, as well as just that Saga side is just a ridiculously absurd. More removal, as well as just getting another, essentially, for Commander at the very least, getting a second, like, Rise to the Dark Realms on a Saga is pretty absurd. I like this card a lot. Shieldred was just kind of like one of those, like, you can sometimes splash it into a deck once in a while, and it sometimes would do pretty good, especially if you, like, for example, play a board wipe, then your opponent then plays, and then you play Shieldred to remove whatever they play next. I like this Shieldred. I like this Shieldred a lot better than that Shieldred without a sweat. So, nevertheless, what the number 10 spot of card that I will miss, and also card that I'm happy to go, Shieldred. Enough said. Number 9 of a card that I am not going to miss. This one is kind of interesting, but the card I'm not going to miss from rotation is Callets, the Risen Hand. This one was actually a weird and fun, kind of like, well, fun in quotation marks, design that came from March of the Machine Aftermath. This was kind of cute when you did janky shenanigans with it, essentially copying any kind of like enchantment and such, so you can copy like one of your buff spells and such, like an ethereal armor or something like that. That was kind of cute, but then it kind of got a little bit obnoxious once Dustborn came around, and we did got the ethereal armor, but we also got Sheltered by Ghosts, and let me tell you, an opponent copying a Sheltered by Ghosts with Callets was very popular, and it got a little bit obnoxious that this Celestia Enchantments deck kind of became a temporary thing. It was more like a tier 2, tier 3 deck, but anytime you face against it, you kind of had to roll your eyes when the opponent was able to deal damage with an enchanted creature and copy their Sheltered by Ghosts and such, so I'm kind of grateful I don't have to deal with this combo anymore because the copying of the Sheltered by Ghosts was a little tad bit obnoxious. As for a card that I'm going to miss, this one's pretty simple. This one is actually the Relic of Legends from Dominaria United. This was actually a really legit cool design and actually kind of helped enable kind of like Legendary Matter shenanigans. It looks innocent enough with being just a simple mana rock that you can tap a legendary round to get mana, but there was actually some really cute things you could do with this. Like, from March of the Machine, you had the Rona from there, where essentially anytime you cast a legendary spell, you untap it, but it also was a looter. So there was like a cute little combo where you can like loot and then untap Rona, essentially tap it for Relic of Legends mana, and then you cast your legendary spell and then untap it and then you either loot or tap for more mana. There's like really cute shenanigans you can do with this card. Like, I kind of had a lot of fun with it whenever I played with Relic of Legends in like either Sultai or even a Rainbow Legendary Matter shenanigans deck. It's a cute design. It's definitely going to definitely transfer it to Commander. I mean, it's already seen Commander play, if I'm being blunt, and pretty much Legendary Matter shenanigans. But I'm still going to miss the standard shenanigans that I can do with this really silly mana rock. Number 8 on this list. This one's pretty quick and to the point. The card that I am not going to miss that's rotating out, Sunfall. Do I have to really explain why Sunfall? It was one of the more obnoxious board wipes that was in Standard. Exiling all your Fiends really made it really tricky to play Go White decks at times, because then they get the really big, kind of like Phyrexian token, which was obnoxious. I did not have fun with Sunfall. And of course, there was the period of time where it was cute with Up the Beanstalk, since it did draw you a card. But yeah, I am not going to miss Sunfall. Sunfall pretty much made it where even if you played Aristocrat decks and you got played against Sunfall, you kind of have to go, Now, granted, really, Aristocrat decks are still going to have a little bit of trouble with board wipes, since we do have Ultima from the Final Fantasy set that does negate Aristocrat triggers as well. But hey, at least they have to end their turn by doing that. But as for the card that I'm going to miss that's on my number 8 spot, I gotta go with Mind Splice Apparatus. This was just kind of like a really cute, kind of like brew round card. The factor that essentially it discounts your instant sorcery spells with that many oil counters that are put onto it. You can do cute shenanigans with it that essentially like you proliferate the counters and then make your spells get discounted significantly and such. And there was just some like really cute decks that came out of it. I mean, heck, even in like before rotations we speak, there's a ridiculously cute deck that you can play with it where you have Mind Splice Apparatus, you at least get free oil counters on it. And you play kind of like a spell that essentially allows you to return an instant sorcery card from your graveyard. And then you essentially have 2 copies of it. And then there's like one variation that came from Final Fantasy that allows you to generate a red mana when you do that. And you essentially sequentially just do that infinite amount of times, do like a storm shenanigans and either have a good storm payoff essentially, or have like a little wizard token that peens and such and you just peen your opponent to win the game. But there's even some sillier shenanigans, like you can discount this to do like a ridiculously big like double gain to make a bunch of copies of stuff. Mind Splice Apparatus is just a really fun design in general, and I am going to kind of miss the janky shenanigans that I am going to do with it. Not going to lie.
7.
Number 7 on my list of cards that I'm going to be happy to rotate out, as well as I'm going to miss. Let's start with the one that I'm going to be happy to rotate out, and that is Venerated Rot Priest. And we could actually just give this as a little additional spot with all the cards that allowed to enable poison shenanigans. Yeah, the toxic mechanic was, well, toxic. Ha 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 ha. But yeah, it was kind of annoying to die to Venerated Rot Priest, especially with variations of this that played a bunch of protection spells and then just like proliferate shenanigans to win with poison. Now, granted, we're not going to get away with poison entirely, since Foundations did give us Vryn, as well as just some other little cards here and there that essentially now makes Death Touch essentially give poison counters, and as well as some other cards that are going to give poison counters from Murder Karloff Manor, and also one that's apparently coming from Edge of Eternities that Mark Rosewater has teased. We'll see the card when we see the card officially. But nevertheless, yeah, I am going to be kind of happy that I don't have to deal with the poison from Venerated Rot Priest, as well as the payoffs from All Will Be One, as well as the injured cards from it. As for the card that I'm going to miss, I play goblins, so I am going to actually miss Runevelt Hordemaster from Dominaria United. This was just a ridiculously good Goblin Lord, honestly. Just being able to buff your goblins, but also when a goblin dies, you exile a card, and if it's a goblin, you essentially keep it in the exile zone that you can play until your next turn. That was a really good card for Goblin decks. Like, the amount of card advantage you got from that card was ridiculously absurd, and allows you to recover from a board wipe, well, presuming no Sunfall shenanigans. But still, just essentially, it was just a really good Lord, and it just allowed to provide some good card advantage. And it was like a quintessential 2-drop in the standard Goblin list. So, yeah. I'm gonna miss my little Goblin friend, and I am not gonna miss that little annoying 1-drop toxic. I'll refrain from saying any other words from it. Moving on. Number 6 on the list, and this one is also pretty simple. Which card am I not going to miss? And that is one of the more annoying 1-drops in aggro, as well as Is It Prowess lists in general. And that has to be Monastery Swiftspear. This was just... There's a reason why this was really good in original Mono Red aggro from the original Tarkir block. Essentially, this was just one of the more obnoxious 1-drop aggro pieces. That Prowess at 1-2 haste. Very good. I'm grateful that the aggro decks at least had a little bit more time with Monastery Swiftspear for those who missed it from the original Dragon's block. But I'm just happy that this is going to go. I really am tired of having to deal with this and have to be like, okay, do you kill me now with a ridiculously big combat trick or a Monstrous Rage? Well, granted, Monstrous Rage got banned, but you know what I mean. Like, Monastery Swiftspear was a little bit obnoxious, especially in the Is It Prowess decks. So, bye-bye. Not gonna miss you. Anyway, one card I am going to miss from Dominaria United, though, and it's a weird one because I know some people who's probably going to be on their list of cards they're happy to rotate out. That's Liliana the Veil. I'll be honest, it was just ridiculously cool to have Liliana the Veil in Standard again, and it didn't really do too much in Standard other than kind of like some mono black mid-range and some discard matter lists in general. And some people who did try to make the original old school Jund list, essentially modern Jund list, standard form, essentially. But still, this is just a fun design in general, just being able to... And it's also kind of like one of those designs that kind of test you a little bit, because it's one of those designs where the best thing about the card is you don't always have to +1, and people don't really realize that. So sometimes the test is being like, okay, do I want to discard cards now and such, or do I want to wait? Do I want to use the -2 to sacrifice? And of course, if you get to the ultimate is kind of almost game-winning for a majority of the time, other than some really fringe circumstances. But still, this was a cool design. I like playing Liliana. I'm going to miss playing Liliana, free drop Liliana in Standard, if I'm being blunt. And I am going to be grateful I don't have to deal with 1-drop Swiftspear anymore. Boy, did I see that card one too many times in Standard, let me tell you. Yeah. Number 5, this one is going to be weird because this is going to be the opposite of a card that I'm happy to rotate out, but I do think there are going to be some players that are going to actually miss this card, and that has to be Glissa Sunslayer. This one is a really good free drop, let me put it like that. And I did play with this free drop too, I'm not going to lie. But it also was really obnoxious. You don't realize how obnoxious a First Strike Death Touch creature is until you play with and play against Glissa, and to be frank, playing against a First Strike Death Touch, it's kind of one of those things where I was annoyed with Mono Red since there was a period of time where you can't block. Glissa Sunslayer. Kind of enough said. But I will admit, it is also fun to get the combat damage triggers, and there are times where all modes can be relevant on the card, so it's kind of cool. But I'll be honest, I kind of have to sigh every time I go against this card, so I'm kind of happy that it's rotating out. As for a card that I'm going to miss, I'll be honest, I'm going to miss Urbrath's Forge. I really liked this kind of card in token-centric deck designs in general. I like playing tokens in general. And just having a incrementally getting big, little trample, hasty creature that does get sacked at the end step. Sure, kind of sad, but also kind of really great for like maybe sacrifice-based synergies. And also there's just ways that essentially this card got a lot better with like Bloom Burrow giving us Caretaker's Talent so that we draw a card every time we make a token. There was actually some really cute ways you can make Urbrath's Forge decks in general, even though most of the time they were just a Boros token list that was just like Boros control. But still, I like Forge, I like making tokens. I'm gonna miss a token making card. Easy said. I mean, heck. We could probably make a tie here and also throw an Elspeth on here. I would do that, but the Catch-22, the 4-drop Elspeth, kind of got outplayed by the fact that we have the new 5-drop Elspeth that's an Anointed Procession, so I figured it's best just to put Urbrass Forge here, if I'm being honest. Still, nevertheless, Urbrass Forge, I'm going to miss you. And Sunslayer, I am going to be grateful I do not have to deal with your First Strike Death Touch, if I'm being honest. Number 4 on this list, and this one is going to be weird for the card that I'm not going to miss rotating out because we gotta have to put a couple here. And that has to be the Phyrexianized version of Vraska, as well as Jace. Let's first start out with Jace. Jace was just probably one of the best mill engine cards that we have got in Standard in quite a while. It can protect itself, it can draw you a card, or even free cards if you were able to mill your opponent a lot of cards. Oh, and also for a majority of the time, people just ultimate it all the time just to mill 15 cards, especially with post-Aether Drift, where we got the River Turn Monument, where that can be a victory condition in itself. You just play Jace, you ultimate Jace, and then you activate your River Turn Monument either next turn or either the following turn, and boom, instant mill win condition. It was a good card, don't get me wrong, but I am not the biggest fan of mill in general, so yeah, I am not gonna miss Jace. But also I have to mention Vraska as well. Now this one is more kind of an innocent design at first, just being kind of like a semi-card draw engine, as well as just a proliferate engine in general for your other Planeswalkers. Where this got obnoxious is, ironically, with Bloom Burrow when we got the card Caretaker's Talent. As well as, I guess I should say, Doubling Season, but you really need Caretaker's Talent for the combo. But for those who don't know, when you fully level up a Caretaker's Talent, essentially you are able to double the counters on a permanent as well as a player. So, for those who don't know the combo, you have a fully leveled up Caretaker's Talent, you play Vraska, Vraska is already in ultimate range, and her ultimate essentially makes it where you deal 9 poison counters to your opponent. Those get doubled due to Caretaker's Talent, OTK, bada bing, bada boom. And we already stated my opinion on poison in general, so yeah, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. This OTK combo, lucky enough, not really as popular anymore post this last month before rotation, but it was a tad bit obnoxious when it was popular. As for the card that I'm going to miss, this one I'm going to actually go a little bit off key with this one, because this is a card that didn't really see that much play. But I kind of regret that I didn't really see much play with the card, because I thought it was kind of a cool design, which is the Temporal Anchor. Now this is more of a commander card than the constructed card. Honestly, making this into a 60 card standard card was tricky, but it still was a legit cool design, just being able to just scry and then have that as a secondary source of card draw with the Exile, synergizes with Exile matter casting cards. It was a legit cool design, not gonna lie. Especially now with Final Fantasy, we have that free drop that makes it that whenever we scry, we draw a card, or surveil, we draw a card. I kind of am tempted to, at least for this last month, to give it one more try before it rotates out, because, yeah, I will miss this really peculiar 6-drop artifact. Now, was it the best card ever? No. But it still was nice. It had a neat, unique enough gimmick, and I kind of like unique gimmicks when brewing. Who would have thought? Number 3. This one is going to be pretty simple to say which card I'm not going to miss rotating out, and that has to be Dominaria United Zur. This one is pretty easy and to the point. Pretty much the Leyline Binding for 1 mana and Domain. You make this into a creature to make essentially a 7/7 lifelink hexproof and Death Touch. Yeah, that was a little bit obnoxious in the Domain decks, as well as the factor that once we got the Overlords, and now the Overlords can easily become enchantment creatures with Zur. It was cute, don't get me wrong, it was cute the first time it happened, but I played against way too much Domain when it was popular that I'm like, yeah, I don't really mind seeing Zur go, if I'm being honest. But the card that I am going to miss on the number 3 spot is actually one Planeswalker that came from the Brothers' War. No, not Urza. It was actually Teferi. Teferi, actually. Yeah, Teferi. It's not Urza, it's definitely Teferi. Honestly, I'm actually going to cheat here and throw 2 Teferis on here. I'm going to throw the 5-cost Teferi from the Brothers War, because that one was kind of like a cool design to reward yourself playing kind of like a semi-control draw deck to essentially make tokens. Hey, I like making tokens. Who would have thought? That also get buffed up anytime you draw cards and such. It also had a unique gimmick of increasing its loyalty when you draw cards. That was cool. But I'm also going to go with the Merchant of Machines Teferi, which was kind of like a cool design where essentially it was called the Invasion of Phyretzia. It was essentially a big battle that you make a bunch of knight tokens and such, and then when you flip it, you get kind of like a cool free drop Teferi that's kind of like a knight-centric matter card. Fun fact, I think I got that card autographed by one of the Teferi cosplayers from MagicCon, if I remember correctly. So still, but yeah, I do like both Teferis from Standard. It is going to be sad to see them rotate out. They were just fun little token-centric designs, and hey, I like making tokens. Enough said on that. And I am definitely not going to miss Zur because I am definitely... Well, it's kind of weird because I'm sick on the fact of getting hit by lifelink enchantments from Zur, but yet I am also playing the new Final Fantasy enchantment matter list where we essentially play with Yuna that gives stuff lifelink and trample, so...
Maybe I am a monster.
I guess the fact that it doesn't have hexproof, it only has the ward 2, maybe that's what makes it not as bad, but, Well, nevertheless, let's move on to number 2, shall we?
Number 2.
My number 2 card that I am not going to miss rotating out of Standard. This one's pretty easy. It is probably one of the best Reanimator targets in Standard. And that has to be Atratza. Oh, Atratza. Whew, where do I start with this card? Okay, first of all, this was... I'll give it credit where credit's due. It was kind of cool to get Atratza and Phyretzia All-Be-One and have it where it foreshadowed the upcoming battle mechanic. So we all kind of speculated what battle was going to be, and then we found out in Merchant Machines. That part was cool. Everything else, though, The fact that you can reanimate this very early with stuff like Zombify or even 5-mana reanimation spells we played at the time, being able to reanimate this and then just get a ton of card draw with that ETB trigger was absurd. All the keywords it had was absurd. Your opponent can usually come back from essentially almost a losing position with an Atratza just with the lifelink. It was an obnoxious reanimation card. The amount of card advantage was absurd. As for a card that I'm going to miss, this one's going to be weird because it's kind of a niche card, but I do like playing Reanimator from times. And I did really love this card that actually helped enable Reanimator, which is Bitter Reunion. Yeah, it's a weird one. I kind of feel bitter that it's going away, but this was just a really good card. Just essentially, sure, we have many variants of this design where you discard a card and draw 2 cards, but the fact that it was an enchantment that also, when you can sacrifice it, enabled haste creatures was very relevant. Like, there was a lot of really cool designs where you try to make, like, a bunch of tokens with the Reanimator deck, or, like, with the Vivi Cauldron combo with that, and Gareth, where you make a bunch of zombie tokens and such, and then what happens is you get the haste enabler. Or, like, let's say, for example, you play Fear of Missing Out, and then you want to make sure to attack with Fear of Missing Out immediately. Well, hey, Bitter Reunion does that. So it just was one of those things where it's, like, a very modest design, but it actually kind of get the job done, all things considered. So, Bitter Reunion, I'm going to be very bitter of you being gone. And Atratza, I am going to be very glad you are gone, to put it bluntly.
Number 1.
So, what is my number 1 card that I'm both going to miss, as well as I am going to be happy to rotate? Well, this is going to be weird, because usually, as you've been seeing with the gimmick of this list, we have essentially 2 or more cards. We're going to have a little bit of an anomaly here, because the card that is the number 1 on the list is 1 card. And it's both a card that I'll be honest, I'm going to miss, but I also have the conflicting feelings that I'm being like, yeah, this has to go now. And honestly, the number 1 card that I'm going to miss, as well as I'm not going to miss, at least in the context of Standard, it's a Tali Prime Conqueror. Okay, let's just get started on why I'm not going to miss this card. Honestly, if Atratza was the number 1 Reanimator payoff, Atali was the number 2 payoff for obvious reasons. Just the fact that you get that ridiculously absurd ETB, very powerful, getting both a free spell from you as well as from your opponent. It allowed a ton of mana cheat, essentially. And essentially a lot of decks just were able to get this out by turn 4 or 5, and then they have ways to either double the ETB with stuff like Annie Joins Up, or stuff like essentially they more or less maybe even had like a Panharmonicon effect in general, or they flicker Atali and such just to repeat the trigger, or even just get another Atali and then repeat again and steal more of your opponent's stuff. It was absolutely absurd. It was absolutely obnoxious. And I also kind of loved it. I'm not gonna lie. It was so fun playing the Atali decks. Like, there were so many ways that people played around Atali. It was just kind of absolutely hilarious. Like, as I mentioned before, there were the decks that were essentially kind of like the Storm decks, where essentially you play Atali, and then you get a Flicker spell, and then you flicker your Atali, and then you play Atali again, and then just kind of like a Discover, you cast stuff from Exile. So they play stuff like Quintorius, essentially from Caverns of Ixalan, where you essentially do burn damage every time you cast a spell from Exile. That was just mwah. Even the one list that I'm actually playing now before rotation is the 4-color Dino Reanimator list. And the way they play that is they also play stuff like Rakdos Joins Up, and then you Atali, and then you play Atali again, essentially from either getting the Atali trigger, or like other dinosaurs that died to the legendary trigger, which then triggers Rakdos Burn trigger. It just was... I'll be honest. This is the epiphany of the card that you are happy to play, but you also are not happy to play against. If there's a card that is the epiphany of that, it has to be Atali Primal Conqueror, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna miss playing Atali. Atali was such a fun card. That being said, I am also happy that I don't have to play against Atali anymore, because getting my stuff stolen constantly was kind of obnoxious. Yeah. And well, that's my list of the rotation hour. So, are there any cards that you're kind of happy that are going to rotate, or you're going to miss from rotation? Tell them down in the comments down below. And nevertheless, I hope you have a lovely day. Actually, wait. We missed something. You know how powerful that ETB with Atali is in general? We forgot to mention about the flip side of the card. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the fact the Atari's ETB was so freaking strong.
Big power! This is power.
That you literally forget the factor that it had a backside where you flip it into a Blightsteel Colossus. Now, don't get me wrong, there were times where the Blightsteel Colossus moment was kind of relevant in some kind of like control matchups, but let's be honest, mostly we've been playing this card to actually just copy the really powerful ETB. This card was so strong that we did not have to use the Blightsteel Colossus about 5% of the time, or about 90% of the time. We only used the Blightsteel Colossus build about like 1 to 5% of the time. Let that sink in for a minute. Okay, now I'm done. Nevertheless, I hope you all have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip hooray!